Very pleased to be joined by senior industry analyst and managing editor at Covers. He is Jason Logan. Jason, thank you for doing this today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Glad to be here. It's an exciting time for sports betting in Canada. So.
Yeah, it really is. Bill C-218 is really causing a lot of headlines over the last little bit. I guess before we get too far into it, what is Bill C-218 for some people who may not be as familiar with this whole thing?
Sure. I mean, we could, I'll give you the Coles Notes version. Essentially, right. Is allowing for single game wagering on sporting events in Canada, which hasn't been allowed for a very, very long time. And, Canadian sports bettors kind of stuck with the Lottery Commission's version of sports betting, which has had to be parlay. So you had to either tie two or more games together in order to place bets, which decreases your chances of winning. And also too, those lottery lines and odds weren't exactly on par with kind of what parlays are supposed to pay out. So kind of a bastardized version of sports betting we've been dealing with here for a long time in Canada.
Yeah, the last place I worked at, we did a thing with Sports Select where we did our NFL locks of the whatever the hell. And I would go like 3-1 each week. And so, well, guess you lost. It's like, the fuck I did. Like, come on.
Yeah, that's parlay betting in a nutshell there. And it was the one legal avenue. Now, Canadian sports betting has kind of had this gray area or gray market, not exactly cracking down on operators from, say, the UK or Europe, as well as those offshore operators too that you see that are, outside of the United States. And then there's some unique setups in Canada too through some of the indigenous tribes, is that they run online sports betting and have been allowed to operate. So there's other sites out there that are wouldn't call them approved, but they're not illegal. So it falls into that gray abyss. And hopefully, the C-290 is going to clear up those sort of things, get out a lot of the underground, some of the backroom bookies and underground sports books and stuff like that, paperheads. You're going to see people, moving from those, getting away from those, and getting into more legal and legislated and things that are easier to kind of get your money in and out of as well too.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and like a lot of the websites would kind of get around it with advertising, like, hey, look at all this information you have, and by the way, if you click this link, then maybe you can play some of these, huh? Like, who's to say?
Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting how this rolls out. I think the lottery is still going to play a big role in this, and maybe, depending on the province, may play the only role in sports betting, which I'm not a giant fan of. But we can get into more of kind of how this rolls out here as we go along.
Right. So how would you? We can go there now. How would you like to see this kind of rolled out? It just not just like one thing on the Sports Select ticket now, or how would you like to see it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in terms of legal sports betting, a lot of the reason why people ventured to UK books or online offshore books or illegal bookmakers is because the ProLine product was bad, or that Sports Select product, the lottery product was bad. And anytime you have a bad product, people are going to go elsewhere and they're going to look elsewhere. And it's fine for that small percentage of recreational bettors that likes to throw down their 3 and 4 and 5 team parlays on an NFL Sunday. But for the guys that like to bet on sports every single night, I mean, it's just not a winnable situation. And the payouts and the rake and the hold from the Lottery Commission stuff just is not sustainable in terms of the lifespan of a sports bettor. And what was happening is that these guys were venturing to online books and illegal books. And that is money that can't be taxed and can't come back into schools and roads. And, what did they estimate? $5 billion going outside of Canada in terms of sports betting revenue, and then if you throw a reasonable tax rate on that, something, hopefully as provinces roll this out, we see tax rates below 10%. That means that you're going to be able to offer a competitive product. So I'm in Ontario, and Ontario, they seem to have their ducks in a row in terms of how they want to roll it out. The Lottery Commission could probably start offering sports betting right away if they wanted. And I think you're going to see that in places like BC with the Play Now product. They have an online sports betting set up, and they're like, okay, we could probably just start doing this right away. The only issue is that what I'm hearing out of BC is that they're going to just limit it to Play Now, and you only have that one option. So if you're a sports better and you don't like their odds or you don't like their offerings, you don't like the way that they do business, then, in terms of taking a legal route, you're kind of stuck with that. And you'll still continue to see bettors bet with offshore books or UK operators and stuff like that, because one, the odds might be better. You're looking at probably, like, in terms of betting the spread, a -110 flat rate is kind of the industry standard. Wager $1.10 to win $1. But the problem is with some of these lottery commissions that, and depending on the tax rates set around this, you may see that regular spread bet get juiced up to -130 or -140.
Right.
See that in some states, places like Pennsylvania in the United States. I believe their tax rate is over 30%. New York is proposing a over 50% tax rate on their mobile betting, which hasn't officially rolled out yet too. And what happens there is that the sports bettors, or the sportsbook operators, have to dish out so much money back to the state or back to the province that it's tough for them to keep the lights on and just kind of pay and cover their overhead of just operating in that state. So they have to generate more handle and they have to generate more hold. And in order to do so, they have to kind of raise the cost of making that bet. And that's when you see that start to trickle down to the product itself. And instead of a -110 flat rate, which is kind of the fair, and that's what you see in Nevada and New Jersey and places like Colorado that have rolled it out and rolled it out well, then you see these kind of large spreads, or sort of these large number of vig out there. And it's just, it waters down the product, and you're going to have people venture elsewhere it may not matter to the guy who wants to bet $5 here. It's cents on the dollar when it comes to that.
Right.
But for guys that are betting constantly, and for anyone that's betting any good chunk of change here, they're going to shop around for the best price. And whether that's a legal route or an illegal route, let's hope that it is a kind of a fair market for sports bettors. If they only get that one sports book, whether that's lottery run, let's make sure it's a fair market. In Ontario, they're kind of looking at having multiple operators out there. So the big guys, the DraftKings and the FanDuels and the PointsBets, the Bet365, obviously the Score has their sports betting portal as well too. They're a long-established Canadian media company that has this beloved app and just such an easy conversion into it. If you've ever gone into the Score app and looked at the chat, it's just all live betting and betting chatter and guys moaning about their bets and all of this. So, there's an audience already there for sports betting for them. And so hopefully in Ontario, we get this nice, robust market, which benefits the consumer. It's just like, if you want a hamburger, you can go to McDonald's, or I can go to Wendy's or Burger King, or if I want a really nice hamburger, I can go to the restaurant down the street, or I can, find what I want. Mm-hmm. And the world is my oyster when I have all these options. But if I just have one crappy burger joint in town, I'm kind of stuck eating that crappy burger. So hopefully we're not stuck eating a crappy burger, at least in Ontario here. And I think you'll see the lottery commissions recognize this as well too. And you're going to have a nice competitive landscape. Everyone's going to be kind of grabbing for market share, which is something that they saw in New Jersey. Some of the New Jersey books were basically bending over backwards and giving away tons of bonuses and free play and all these bet boosts and stuff like that, just to entice players to come in and get that player. And then also too, as a sports bettor and a savvy sports bettor, you can have multiple sports books. And so, if someone's dealing -7 on the Chiefs tonight and someone's dealing -6.5, I can shop around and get the better of the number. If I want to bet the Chiefs, I can take the 6.5 for the Chiefs, or if I like the underdog, I can say, oh, well, I'm going to get the extra half point here on this team at the key number of 7 and shop around there. So having multiple operators all offering, a competitive product and kind of vying for customer base, that's great for the client. That's great for the customer. It's great for the sports bettor. The last thing you want to see is kind of a real watered down product that's not comparable, and it's continuing to push people away into operations that aren't taxable. So.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask about like the guy who already has a couple of offshore accounts. Someone who's like, I'm betting on the first 5 innings on the Mets because DeGrom is pitching. Like guys who take this relatively seriously. In terms of changes to their life for this sort of a thing, is it just going to be, well, now you have another place that's going to have another number out there? Like, is it just providing that variety, or is something else going to change for them, do you think?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's always good to have a bunch of outs. You You can have a book here and a book here. Whether they start cracking down on the offshore books like you've seen in the States, I don't know if that's going to come into place. I think, I think offering an ease of money in and an ease of money out is always a benefit to the sports bettor, and that's what's going to attract a lot of the casual sports bettors. As you know, with some of these offshore operators, you're either giving them your credit card number and you don't know who you're giving it to. A lot of the banks just won't take it anyway. They just don't approve it. Or you're dealing with money transfers that take time and effort, and you got to be done in person and send them back and forth. There's always these loopholes. And then the rise in cryptocurrency has been such a boom for the offshore operators as well too. I've funded books with crypto. It's super easy to get in and out. It's almost too easy to get in and out in terms of depositing into your bank account or depositing into your bankroll and then withdrawing. They're pretty quick with it too. You're not having to sit around and wait for them to process this money order that shows up and it's from some crazy holding company and like that. You get those dirty looks at the bank when you bring those checks in. But it's the reason why people play Proline, because they can go to the gas station and flop down $5 and have their ticket. Right. So if they can put the emphasis on online and mobile, because that's where everyone wants to bet. The sports book is no longer in the casino; it's in the living room now. And the mobile capability allows you to get down on multiple markets, multiple games, the in-game betting, which is something you couldn't do through a Proline and stuff like that. But just ease of money in and out. So if I'm able to fund my account through my bank, and that's great, or if I can get if I can go to the store, go to the corner store and put my bet down, and all of a sudden that becomes the sportsbook kiosk, then that's going to also help. Especially with a lot of the new sports bettors coming into it, throw $25 on the Monday Night Football game, and they just want to be able to do that as easy as possible, and then withdraw their winnings as easy as possible too. When you win a Proline ticket, you just go to the gas station and slap it down, and buddy pays it out, unless you get something astronomical. But for the most part, you can get your cash back in hand. So.
Yeah. I remember, and again, don't do anything illegal, kids, but I remember having to go get like a $50 prepaid Visa gift card and then put that in on places. Like it's kind of crazy to think of where it's gotten just in my time of enjoying this particular recreational habit around sports to go from that to now, oh yeah, the BC is going to have an app. Like it's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, it is a little bit wild. I mean, with PASPA being repealed in the States, but this is something that Canada could have got out ahead of a long time ago. They had Bill C-290, which I want to say is like 2012-ish. I'm trying to remember all my dates here, but it was earlier in that decade. And it was the single game sports betting bill. And it passed unanimously through the House of Commons, made it to the Senate, and that's where the leagues got involved. And you saw the NHL and Major League Baseball, these leagues that had franchises in Canada, and they were the first to oppose it. And then some of the arguments were just so like way out there. Like, oh, what about these, fourth line hockey players, and their wives are used to playing or used to living this lifestyle, and they're going to fix games because of that if you allow for single game wagering. And it was just like some of these stories and narratives were completely asinine. And the thing is within a legal and regulated market, that's how you protect the integrity of the sports, because the sports books work hand in hand with the authorities, the gaming commissions, and they monitor the action. So anytime you see these match fixing claims come up in tennis or something like that, it's rarely is it a WTA event or something like that, where it's like a thing. It's usually like a third tier tennis tournament somewhere in God knows where in Europe, and they're taking a regular amount of action on a particular match. And they're like, geez, we would normally only take maybe $500 on this match, but there's, now it's up to 18. Oh, now it's up to 2,500. Oh, now there's like $5,000 riding on this match. And that alerts authorities to say, the sports books call them up and say, oh, we're getting irregular betting patterns on this match. You might want to investigate it. And sometimes, there's smoke, there's fire. Sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't. But that's how they catch these guys, working hand in hand. And the Nevada sports books do the same thing with the NCAA and the NBA and the NFL, and they have for a long time. This isn't just new. Like they've worked hand in hand to help kind of protect their players, because as a sports bettor, you don't want to wager on a game that's fixed.
Right.
That's that's terrible. That's terrible. That's just burning. I might as well burn my money up. And that makes me not, not want to bet anymore. And also too, it makes me hate that sport for not, protecting its integrity and its players.
Mhm.
And, the leagues and the sports books don't want this stuff to happen because it explodes their product. So, with a legal and monitored market, you'll pick up on these sort of things. And that was one of the arguments for C218 was they were worried about match fixing. And the thing is that, if you're a parlay betting system, yes, it is a lot harder to fix 3 games so that they all pan out. But
Right.
in the big scheme of things, the Canadian sports betting haul is a drop in the bucket compared to what is happening globally. And the guys that are fixing these games aren't betting, at DK in Canada. They've got a bunch of different outs all over the place. They're going to spread their money out to a bunch of different places that are going to take the amount of money that you need to bet on those sort of things to make it worth your while too. So, some of these mainstream sports books are pretty protective with their bet limits and size of the wagers that you can get down to because they're, they have to cover their own ass. So
yeah, I've always found the match fixing one hilarious. Like the internet's existed for a very long time, and like
yes.
you could do it yesterday if you needed to. But someone's going to wait for the province of Ontario so that you can only fill in 1 box instead of 3. And now we're going to start max pitching. Like really, come on.
Yeah. The guys that want to do those sort of things, they, they're not waiting for the Score app to open it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They know some guys who know some guys, those fellas. But there are some other bugaboos that come about. The problem gambling issue is something that always comes up. It's something that's prevalent in the UK and in Europe. And and then also to that oversaturation. We saw it with DFS. You turn it on NFL Sunday and you're just getting hit over the head with DK and FanDuel and sign up and do this and win lots of money. And so there definitely has to be a respectable amount of messaging and also a very tactful touch when it comes to sports betting. And that has to come from the sports books all the way down through to the operators and any media partners, teams, even places like covers.com. We have to preach responsible gambling. And when you do make it a little more widely available, definitely you're going to have more cases of problem gambling. Now, the great thing is that with legislated regulated books, they're all post-up shops. You have to have money in hand to bet. Right. It's not credit books like you would get with like an underground bookie or paperhead operators where Tuesday the bookie comes collecting. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You could be down $5,000 over the weekend, and then he's showing up looking for his money on Tuesday. With these sports books, these legal and operated sports books, they can track betting patterns for accounts. There are sports books out there now that do this already. They'll give you an alert and say, oh, by the way, do you know that you've wagered this much money, or that that you've placed this many bets this week? Maybe it's time to take it. They'll have these little fail-safe triggers that come in. And then much like kind of a watch list, they'll have people that can either opt in and opt out. So they're not allowed to, if you're a problem gambler, you can put your name down and they can say, no, we're not going to take any bets from you. Much like a bartender kind of regulating, the guy at the bar who's falling over. There is a responsibility from the top down for everyone. So.
As far as covers.com goes, like, again, these options have been available for a long time, but now with it being maybe a bit more mainstream, does this change how you guys, for pardon the pun, but cover things over there now?
I think it now, and not that it isn't already, but you're seeing it more so in the States, and you're seeing it beginning to be in Canada now, is the sports betting narrative is now the sports narrative, much like it is in the UK, much like it is in Europe. Everyone knows the odds. Everyone, they have a pundit come on and talk about the odds for this game. And it's very much part of the sports conversation right off the bat, where before I always said the media was a little bit, they were very picky when it came to when they wanted to talk about sports betting. And I always said, Super Bowl, March Madness, and Kentucky Derby. That's the 3 times that the mainstream media wants to talk about sports betting. And then the rest of the time, they're like, get back in the shadows, you degenerate gamblers.
Right.
They would never, ever bring that up. But now you're seeing, ESPN has a sports betting show, and Major League Baseball launched a sports betting show. Major League Baseball, of all places.
Yeah.
Pete Rose aside, they were one of the leagues that came to the defense of the integrity of the game when C290 was on the docket there 10 years ago. So, and now now that you're having venues with sports books in them. The NHL has the stadium in Washington just opened that William Hill Sportsbook.
Mm-hmm.
Much like you would see with any of the soccer stadiums in the UK. You can go to a kiosk and place your bet, or you just bet from your phone and live bet the game. And it's all, team logos and players and everything is connected to it. So, I think there's probably a bigger reach that we could find now because it is becoming more mainstream and it's not that taboo. Within the States, the repeal of PASPA, I mean, we have some great relationships with a lot of the major networks in the States, a lot of the big local broadcasters as well too. And I'll do TV spots every week talking about the local teams or big events that are going on and telling that story from the sports betting side of thing. And it just allows them to tell a different layer or give a different layer to their sports coverage. When we talk about, the US Open is in San Diego, and San Diego wants to talk about, the local guys. They want to talk about Mickelson. They want to talk about Schauffele and those kind of guys. And we'll do that for a bunch of different markets. So the interest is there. And the thing I love about sports betting in a sports discussion is you can't be on the fence about it because there is a line drawn in the sand. It's like, are the Lakers 7 points better than the Bulls? Yes or no? It's like, yes, we all know the Patriots, or the Chiefs are better than the Raiders. Okay, but are they 3.5 points better than the Raiders? And that's the big debate. And then you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is. And I love that there's usually always a decisive yes or no to the sports betting conversation, which you don't always get in sports. Sometimes they're like, well, if they do this and they do this, then they might win. But yeah, of course they're going to win. It's like, but they'd be 7 points better. It's a great way to kind of cut through a lot of the fluff.
Mm-hmm. Jason, thank you so much for this. I really, really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. It's a subject I'm rather fascinated by. So thank you for shedding some light on it today. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on anytime.